there is a point at which a few years ago, I was, when I started my business, I was like, I'm going to go hit these numbers and I'm going to become X, whatever. I'm going to have this income and I'm going to do all these things and I'm going to get all these followers, right? And I realized that it was so taxing on my adrenal system.
Yep.
I was like, oh, right. I remember what burnout feels like. This is what burnout feels like. And I was only a couple years in. And, part of it was because it was during the pandemic. And so I was like doing my best to just show up where I could and be of service. And we were all had no boundaries, right? We're like, I'll just be at my computer 20 hours a day. It's fine. Yeah. It's fine. It's fine.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
All right, everybody, let's do this. Welcome back to No Set Path. I'm your host, Drew English. If this is your first time joining us, thanks so much for being here. So 2024 has been weird, right? I don't think I'm alone in that sentiment. It's been an awkward and tumultuous year for lots of people for lots of different reasons, not the least of which professionally. If you are in film, photo, video, music, really any kind of creative industry, you've probably had a rough go of it. I know I have in my own ways. All this is to say, I've been very inconsistent with getting episodes for the show out. I said I was going to do solo episodes. I didn't do solo episodes. I did spin my email newsletter back up, which is fun. So I'll link to that in the show notes because I'd love to have you. But, here's to holding me accountable in 2025, I guess. I'm going to wrap up this year with a final interview with Meritt Minnemeyer, who is an executive coach here locally in the Hudson Valley. Merritt and I met on a lark at a local Chamber of Commerce event earlier this year, and we just really hit it off. She's awesome. She's one of my most favorite people to talk to of late, and I think you're going to get a lot out of this conversation. She kind of exists in a world a bit outside of the typical creative professionals that I interview on this show. So I really hope you enjoy. As always, if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. That really helps us out here. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, basically wherever you get your shows, give us a 5-star review. It would really help us out. And without further delay, here is my interview with Meritt Minnemeyer. So you have quite the story, but what you do now is you're an executive coach.
I am.
So for those who don't know, what exactly does that mean? What does your work entail? What does your professional career look like right now?
Mm-hmm. So an executive coach, the way I look at it, is someone who supports high-level leaders, whether they're high-level in their own organizations, right? Whether it's their founders or whether they are in a more established organization, to execute along the lines of their values, their directives, their mission, their goals. And my version of executive coaching is supporting people who are decision makers and who have a purpose that is greater than themselves. Right? Yeah. So they have their own sense of vocation, and they also have a sense of stewardship, or I keep wanting to say agenda, and that has kind of a loaded word. But what I really mean is they're up to something that is greater than just their own benefit.
I think there's a crossover between executive world and creative world, and maybe that doesn't seem readily apparent, but I think, no matter what kind of executive you are in that position, I think it requires a certain level of outside the box and creative thinking.
Yes.
And I think a lot of those traits, bigger picture, things outside of yourself, that kind of stuff really translates well over into the creative field as well, because a lot of folks who get into creative professions, that's really the impetus. It's not so much, hey, I'm going to make millions of dollars. Very rarely does anybody do that. It's more well, what can I create that's bigger than me? What can I leave behind? How can I contribute my voice to the world at large? So that's really interesting. How'd you find that work? How did you get into it?
Well, so I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and my grandfather ran a multi-continent spanning publicly traded company that he's founded from the ground up.
Oh, cool.
And so I grew up going to board meetings and traveling the world to trade shows with him and my family. My whole family, that side of the family, worked for the business except for me. On the other side, my mother and father ran their own Main Street business. It was an architectural design and build firm.
Got it.
So I also, while I was traveling and going to these board meetings and running under the table while they were all, voting yay or nay, I also was at the breakfast table talking about, whose invoices were outstanding and what the job site was going to be today, and what are the projects that entailed. And I got to go to the job sites and play in this. I joke sometimes that other kids grew up in sandboxes and I grew up on a pile of sawdust.
Yeah.
So I have both of those experiences that were tremendously formative for me. And then because small business and large business, any business involving family can be quite complex and stressful on a family system. That proved exponentially true in my family system, and that in my adolescent brain, sort of made me rebel against it and say, well, I'm going to go be an artist.
Right.
Forget money. I don't need to make money. I'm just going to be an artist. So I followed my little dream to New York to become an actor, a Broadway star, and quickly realized that I was not all that interested in begging other people for work, and totally in spite of myself, and actually didn't dawn on me till years later that I had done this, but I followed my entrepreneurial DNA and started my own company with some partners. I was actually approached by a partner, said, hey, do you want to be a part of this? And I was like, sure, of course, not thinking anything of it. Years later, I was like, oh, right, of course I did that, because that's what I know how to do.
Yeah.
So right away there, that was that crossover between executive and artist. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because so often people are like, how in the world are you crossing those two divides? But it actually is not a divide at all in my brain, right? So the world of theater was not the world that I found myself to be really identifying with. There were some wonderful things about it and some things that I just didn't vibe with. And one of the main that I did want to have a sense of financial security and control over my life, such as it is, if we have any. And so I started talking to people about teaching, and I had a mentor invite me to teach a class, and I fell in love with teaching, and right away got into sort of this really cool social justice-y art education world where I got to go into schools with kids who are considered, quote, at risk. They have a different language now, but that was the verbiage at the time. And working with these kids who had a different set of resources than I'd ever been accustomed to, and deploying some tools and some skills and some processes so they could get in touch with their voice, their creative voice, and use that not just for creative purposes, but for educational purposes, for leadership purposes, for career purposes. And that was fascinating to me and so exciting to see those light bulbs go off. I won't go through all the details,
sure.
But it got me essentially into education in a more traditional sense, and then facilitation with teens and leadership development, and then adults. So ultimately was brought in to do some facilitation for corporate lawyers and law enforcement and political elected officials, and it kind of bloomed from there. And then there's more to that story about how I got to where I am in this moment of my career. But that was the path from art to business, essentially.
Got it. And the last time we sat down, like there was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But I feel like there was a big break in the middle where you like literally you raised a family, and there was a lot of like family stuff that went on. I know you lost your first husband, and we can touch on that if you want. We certainly don't have to. Mm-hmm. But I think what I found really interesting is like kind of it does it a disservice if I just say interesting. Like everybody's story is interesting, but I think what I really resonated with is you've been through to like an extreme degree, right? Literally what so many people, including myself, go through, which is like balancing career and family.
Yeah.
And how do you find that happy balance? And you've been through the ringer, like more than most people.
More than once.
Yeah. And so it's just, I think just to jump right into it, it's like, how do you approach from like running your own business? Like we'll touch on a few other things, but just overarching, like your whole life has basically been very entrepreneurial, running your own business for the most part, and raising a family with a lot of like really rocky ups and downs in the middle. And it's like, how do you approach that? Or do you have something like a toolkit that you like pull from to just like put yourself in the right frame of mind?
So that's a big question.
I know.
And it evolves. It has evolved over time, and I think it still is evolving. I mean, just this week, I am coming back from an experience of being out of the country. So I am coming back from that, and we sometimes refer to that as integration, right? You kind of go away, and you come back into your, whether it's vacation or whatever. And I'm asking myself the same questions over and over again, because I'm a different person now than I was 2 weeks ago when I left. And it's not easy all the time to like, oh, right, that's what I learned, who I became there, as how does that person now land back into this life, and how does it inform what I do next? In the context of our very rapidly changing world, with all the volatility and all the opportunity and exciting things and scary things that are always happening, but are happening on a different scale now. Anyway, so apropos question, what I'm coming back to in this moment, as I'm in the process currently, is that sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And listening to when I can get really quiet and I just know that my panic is set aside and my ego is set aside and the expectations of others are all set aside, which is hard to do, right? That takes a lot of practice to be able to get to that place. And there's a few different tools I have for that.
Yeah.
That in those moments I can say, okay, I know that at the essence of me is still wanting to continue on this path. And so how can I do that gently, I think is the question I'm asking now. Traditionally in my life, I have fought through a lot, partly because I grew up with a lot of scrappy people doing a lot of scrappy stuff, and that was how they got things done. And there's a lot of great benefit to that. And also going through all the ups and downs that I have, and being an advocate for other people in my life where I've had to be pretty scrappy. I'm pretty tired. I can't
speaking my language.
Yeah, I can't be so scrappy anymore. I don't have the energy.
Same.
So how do I maintain that clarity of focus and be gentle with it?
Yeah, I'm going to stop you there because you've said like 10 things that I'm like, oh my God, I could go on a million tangents. But like focus is something that's really interesting. And it's something that I struggle with a lot. Because whether it's, shiny object syndrome, where it's like, oh, I could do this, that, or the other thing, or it's just the like scope of life is so much more like intense and broad now than it was when I was in my 20s, and I'm just tired.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that tiredness comes from like mental and emotional and how it translates physically. It's like all this manifests as like, oh, I just want to take a nap all the time. But it's not because I'm like physically tired. It's because mentally and emotionally I'm like wiped.
Right. Well, which actually does, to use your word, translate into physical wipedness as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we have one system and we think of ourselves as like mind and body. It's connected. It's all the same system, right? So where there's stress on one part, there's going to be stress on another part.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think focus, especially for me, right? Focus is a huge thing for me because, and I'm sure other people listening will relate. It's like oftentimes I kind of like crash and burn a little bit internally, where I'm like, what do I need to be focusing on? Because the things that I need to focus on immediately to earn a paycheck, let's say, are fine, but less and less fulfilling as life goes on. And, obviously family is a big focus for me, but that comes with its own challenges because when I focus on family, then it takes my time away from trying to bolster what I'm able to contribute monetarily to the household. So I think focus, just to like hone in on that a little bit, is like maybe something we should look at a little deeper, because I totally hear you on coming back from like a totally different environment. So a little story, 2018 or 2019, I feel like it's summer of 2019, I went on a wilderness quest.
Cool.
In Colorado. It was like a men's group thing. And I was gone for a week, and three days of that were solo camping in the backwoods of Colorado, like under a tarp, just on a sleeping pad in a sleeping bag under a tarp. That's it. Completely disconnected from everything else. And going through that like reintegration, everything felt different. Not bad different. It just felt different coming back. And the more time goes on, like that kind of fades away, and then you kind of get back into your old routines. But there's always something from that experience that like I carry with me. Yeah. Right?
Yes.
And so, not to be too long-winded about it, but it's like when you go through change in your life, sometimes small, sometimes big, how do you refocus yourself and like take what you can from those past experiences and refocus into like the path forward for you? Like that's the big mystery for me.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've been thinking a lot about that too. And the thing that I got from that I received from that experience last week was this profound sense of safety.
Interesting.
And that was something that I did not know that I was going to receive or that I was even seeking. I had no agenda around that. And yet that's what I experienced ultimately. Was I had a beautiful connection and great relationships and, learned some cool stuff and was in a beautiful place. And I walked away with feeling a new level of there is an opportunity, a place to be safe in the world, which was, come to find out, pretty new for me at that level. So that's what I bring back from that experience now. And I'm trying to work on, the point I'm trying to make is that's the value that I'm trying to bring to my work now as I come back. Not that I can recreate that sense of safety from that moment, because it was with those people in that place, but how do I find it within myself? And so when we talk about focus, whether it's focus on a value or focus on a quality that we want to bring, rather than focus on an outcome.
Yep.
Right. So it's so easy to get caught up in focusing on an outcome. I want to make this much money. I want to have these many likes. I want to have this many connections. And those things are in useful measures. They're not, but they're not, and I see the look on your face, like they're not satisfying.
Totally.
They're not qualitative, right? They're just one set of measures that we can use to a certain, degree that is helpful, and sometimes not.
Yeah. So
how do I create that sense of safety for myself? Well, to me, that has to do with listening to my instincts, or my intuition, maybe rather than my instincts, because instincts can be a little bit different.
Okay.
Instincts can be patterned, right? Yeah. But listening to my intuition and saying, how can I create safety for myself? What feels like that sense of safety? What in my business practice, in my relationship building, in my how I reach out to somebody, how I hold space for somebody else. How can I bring that quality of safety into that? So that creates a sense of focus for me, and I offer that as an anchor, whatever that quality or value is. How do I express? Maybe it's connection, or maybe I want to express high value, or I want to express whatever that quality or value is, and bringing that as a sense of focus.
I feel like this a little emotional well up, not like teary emotion, but just like there's a lot happening in here, because a lot of what you're saying is like very much vibes with where I'm at. And this is why this is the same feeling I had when we sat down at the coffee shop, and I'm feeling it again, because it's like I feel very like on a similar page. And so there's a few things you said, but one of them is like value versus like a tangible outcome, or I forget exactly what you said, but value has been at the forefront of my mind, because I probably mentioned this, that I've been in like a group coaching program, which has been awesome. Like it has been awesome just to like get out of my own bubble and be in a group with a bunch of other entrepreneurs who, for the most part, do things that are completely different from what I do. There's maybe one or two other folks who are like tied in with the like visual kind of production world. Not many. Everybody else does something different. So that's great. It's been very like aligning for me in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But something we've focused a lot on is the concept of value, right? Versus, you can set goals, but it's the arrival fallacy, right? It's like you can set a goal, and I've done this in my just my freelancing, where it's like, oh, I remember it's like, oh, if I could just make $1,000 a day as a cinematographer, then I'll be happy. And it's bullshit, because you make it, you do it, and then there's something else, and then there's something else, and so the arrival fallacy, it's a real thing. So I discovered that it has a name. And then this other thing, like I literally last night was journaling about this very concept, where it's like, I feel like I'm trying too hard. unintentionally, I feel like I'm trying too hard. And there's a lot that goes into it because it's like, I only have so much bandwidth up here and a lot of it's taken up with home and family and blah, blah, blah. And so I feel like this urgency.
Sure.
There's something else underlying all that.
Yeah.
And that's like, well, how do I value myself? Right? Because like I said earlier, a lot of what I do now professionally for work, going out and like shooting projects for people, and it's fine. Like there are much worse ways to make a living, but it, like the longer I'm in it, the less and less satisfying it becomes, because I feel like this shift and I want to do something more. And I've been trying too hard. So I came up with this concept that I got from another friend of like sitting on your hands, right? And the idea, but it's true. It's like if I just sit, like mentally sit on my hands and don't do anything and just like see how the cards fall around me, it's like, well, what opportunities come my way? Or what am I really like interested in or passionate about? Trying to take it out of the context of professional success or outcome. Yeah. And then things get really interesting because I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I can identify a bunch of different things, but I don't know. It leaves me with a different set of problems, which is like, what do I focus on?
Yeah.
Right. But it's just really interesting. It's a very, very long-winded way of saying like focusing on value has so much more potential to move the needle for anybody, especially people who fend for themselves, who run their own business and like kind of are in charge of their own destiny. But it's a tough nut to crack.
It's for so many reasons. I mean, not the least of which you have a family and a little girl, and like, I mean, you've got these people that you're responsible to and for, and yourself. And we live in a culture that highly values the remuneration of contribution.
Yeah.
And all the gold stars about, oh, you've had a 6-figure or a 7-figure, right? All those things.
Totally.
And so what you're saying is really important, and it's very, very difficult to stop all of those behaviors and all of that like reactivity and response to all the different cues that we've learned our whole life. And again, I am not an anti-capitalist, right? Like I buy into the system to a fair degree. And also I think that there's more to it than we often give ourselves credit for.
Yeah.
And more opportunity than we give ourselves credit for. And so as you're sitting on your hands, what's guiding you?
That's a really great question. I was not prepared to answer questions. I think a lot of what we've already talked about in ways. I think what's guiding me is the fact that as much as some of it might be easier, like I know I've had a desk job in the past, like I can't go back to that. So I have to continue to be okay with some level of unknown. But I think what's guiding me is knowing that I want to express, like self-expression, I think is something that's guiding me a lot. And I think I've had so many different like iterations of my creative career because I'm trying to find some level of self-expression that I get to in some way. But then at some point there's a tipping point where it's like, okay, well, this is again, just a job. It's a cool job. You know, when I was just doing music, like that was cool, but I couldn't earn a living doing it. Yeah. And so then I found film and video and I can earn a living doing that. And it's still cool, but now it's again more of a job. And now I find myself like things being cyclical where it's like, I want to explore music again just for me. So I think self-expression is part of it. I think legacy is another part, which I try very carefully to balance between wanting to put like something of myself out into the world that hopefully stays around longer versus ego. Because ego's tricky. So much of it pertains to like, you know, cautionary tales, right? It's a tough balance, as you will agree, when you are, you know, starting your own business or building a business or pivoting a business, whatever, involved in like fending for yourself. Like you got to balance and keep that ego in check because you need a certain amount of chutzpah,
Yeah.
right? To like get things moving, but you have to like really keep yourself in check because it's easy to kind of get carried away and
critical personality in a way.
Oh man, and especially in like film and music and all that stuff, there's so much ego that's floating around, and it's disguises itself as different things,
as artistry.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a really interesting point about where the crossover between entrepreneurship and a creative life is very much overlaps, right? In the same way that an actor or a director or a dancer has to put, like, my headshot is my calling card, or my reel is my calling card, and it's me. It's just me. I'm the instrument. I'm the voice. I'm the face. I'm the expression. I'm the personality. That is my business. If I'm in that world, not so much. I think visual arts is a little bit different, but performing arts certainly, and music too. I would say depending on what avenue you take there. And as an entrepreneur, that's also or can be true. And how does one stay right sized?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
About that. It is a very tricky thing. I love the definition of ego as the place in our psyche, in our system, where our soul interprets the world.
Interesting. Okay.
It's sort of like this nexus of like being on the earth and having your highest self available. And it's like that is the meeting point of that. And so which to me explains, or it is an interesting explanation of why it's so confusing. Like the ego is such a confusing place. It's like it's a little kid. It's a big dreamer. It's a scared little, right? It's like all the things. And how does it make sense of all the input that we have on every moment?
Yeah. I mean, ego is really interesting because as an entrepreneur or someone who's out there on your own, it kind of is like a survival mechanism.
It has to be.
To a point.
Yeah.
But it's like, where do you shut the door on it when it becomes a negative?
Yeah.
It's very fascinating. I mean, I could go on and on and on about all this. But yeah, it's so like all this is so fascinating. And I find myself with, taking all this stuff into consideration that we've already talked about, in a place lately where I'm like, things are forced in front of my face, or I'm presented with certain situations and I have to try and figure those out. So really great example is I'm bad at not having anything to do, or instead of not anything to do, I'm bad at, how do I want to say it?
Sitting still?
I'm bad at sitting still, or if things are kind of like stagnating for a little while, or like status quo, like if there's no forward momentum towards a goal, I feel like I'm a failure, even though I know I'm not a failure. It's like my initial reaction is like, dude, what are you doing with your life? And simultaneously, and maybe he'll watch this, a buddy of mine who I've known since my Boston days, just luck of the draw, through relationships, he's been the touring drummer for this guy, Noah Khan, who this year blew up. And they just played 2 sold-out nights at Madison Square Garden and 2 sold-out nights at Fenway Park. The Fenway shows were 37,000 people big. Wow. And that was like a dream of mine for years.
Sure.
That never happened. And so it's like, on the one hand, I'm incredibly psyched for my friend. He's a great dude, But on the other hand, I have all these, like, I guess they're jealous feelings, but it's not like anger jealousy. It's just like, oh man, like, did I miss the boat on that? Or how do I want to say it? It's like, that was a road I was going down. And at some point I just took a hard right and went another direction. And so all of those feelings are kind of coinciding with like shifts in business and work and things like that for me. And it's a really weird place to be. And to like tie it all up, it's like, I can't imagine that you don't run across similar situations with clients or potential clients in your day to day.
Sure. And with myself.
Yeah. And right. Yeah, exactly.
For sure. I think that my response to that is that all timing is perfect. And that might seem like a little kind of like nice little bow to wrap it in. But when I say that to myself, my nervous system calms down.
Yeah.
And essentially what it means to me is that it's not up to me.
Yeah.
My choices are up to me, but everything else is not up to me. what your friend's success is not up to you, right? It's in part wasn't up to him all the way. He put himself in the right place in the right time with the right people to create that outcome. And you put yourself in the right place in the right time to create the outcome that you have now with your beautiful family.
Exactly.
And for you and I having this conversation.
Exactly.
And I've done the same. So I think there's definitely a lot of what ifs, right? Like, the road not taken, or the millions of roads not taken. And that's totally reasonable to have that, like, what if, because we had momentum going down the road that we see, like you had that momentum.
Sure.
And also, it doesn't mean that could never happen for you if you decide to put your momentum back on that track. Your cart on that track. It also can mean I think it's about acceptance. Acceptance can be such a powerful practice. Not that we have to say we love where we are, or we're happy with where we are, or it all makes sense, but just to accept it, and that lessens the resistance in our ego, in our system, to say, "Oh, I should have." Right? It's like, okay, it is. So what do I do? I accept that where I am now is where I am meant to be, if you will, or that is the natural result of all the choices I've made. That's okay.
Yeah.
And so what do I do now?
Yeah. Because acceptance is very different than just giving up and rolling over.
Oh, totally different. Yeah. Acceptance is like, well, never mind. It is not. Yeah, it could be acceptance of my mistakes, of the choices that I made that I don't feel good about. A little self-compassion.
Yeah.
For the person that I was, that did the best they could at that time, in the context where they were, and with the beliefs they had about themselves at the time. Even if it wasn't. Well, I go back and I look like, okay, 12 years ago when my husband passed, I'm like, was I the best person that I could have been? No,
sure.
I was not. And was I trying to do my best? Yes, I was trying to do my best with what I knew how to do in the moment.
Yeah.
And my best wasn't great, but it was the best I could do at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I think another thing that I struggle with a lot is the concept of time, right?
Sure.
And, not to get really, like, not to go too far down that road, but it's like, I've always struggled with it, from like, oh, how am I going to fit XYZ into today, down to, how late is too late to, like, pivot into a new career.
Yeah.
Or a new, like, pocket of a career path you're already on. These are things I think about a lot because, as we've talked about previously, I'm at a crossroad where I'm considering different things and, like, what the next evolution of work and business and that professional life might look like. And part of me is just like, how many times am I going to pivot before I can't anymore? Right.
This brings up a story, if I might share.
Please. I'm, like, trying to set it up a little bit here.
So the story that's coming to mind is of one of my very first clients when I was just starting my business, and it was somebody who was referred to me, and I didn't know them. It was like a kind of a peripheral referral, and I didn't know how to charge, and I was, like, kind of freaking out about the whole thing. And she sat down over French fries. It's my favorite thing.
Yes, one does.
Yes, one does. And she's like, okay, and I'm not a career coach per se, but she's like, here's my resume. Tell me what to do. And I was like, oh, well, that's, first of all, a good coach, an ethical coach will not tell you what to do ever.
Absolutely not.
Unless there's a consultant part of it, right? That's what a consultant does. Okay. Anyway, so I was like, I can't tell you what to do, but let me take a look and see what I can sort of intuit from your if I can read your resume. So, and what I saw was that here's a person who presented to me as very bright, very capable, highly creative, intuitive, kind, into a lot of different things, who had changed jobs every 2 years and pretty much making lateral moves every single time in a fairly low position, meaning that they weren't high level leadership or anything. She was just kind of going from desk to desk to desk to desk, to org to org to org to org.
Got it.
And not getting herself paid very much. So I said, so the pattern I'm seeing is this. So what are you seeking? What are you really after? So, well, I need a new job. I said, I don't think that's true. I don't think you just want a new job. I think something else is going on here. And she's like, well, I'm just not sure because this is happening in my personal life and this is happening over here. And I said, okay, so if you could create a whole new life for yourself, let's just like clean slate, totally like no money's no object, magic wand.
Yeah.
And she said, well, what I really want to do is move overseas. And I've always wanted to be one of those people that teaches English in a country like overseas. And I have a passion for Japan and I have a passion for Tanzania. They're like vastly different.
Vastly different.
But she's like,
okay, sure.
And she's living here in New York State.
Okay.
So vastly different from those places.
For sure.
And there were some definite obstacles in the way of her being able to accomplish that goal. I mean, she was in her midlife. She had responsibilities. She had ties. And
this sounds very familiar.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it was not an easy, okay, I'll just go. I'm not, 22. I'm like, oh, I'll just hop on a plane and go.
Which I think just as a quick sidestep is at the crux of like where I'm at.
Sure.
And where I think a lot of people are
yes.
at. Yeah.
Yes. Which is why I'm
for sure.
So ultimately what we did is over the course of, I want to say a year, 18 months, maybe about 18 months, we just created the next right step for her.
Yeah.
What's the next right step? Well, the next right step might be I have to have a hard conversation with the person I'm in a relationship with. The next right step, which is a very different situation than yours, by the way, but the next right step might be, oh, you know what? Actually, if I really want to teach English, I'm going to talk to somebody who has done that and see how they did it. Okay, and the next right step is Googling places that certify people who do that. We'll come to find out places that certify, some of them also place people who do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so where do they place? Oh, guess what? They place in Japan. Interesting. Okay, so what would that look like? Okay, well, I'll also have to talk to my family members because XYZ is happening. And then ultimately, she went to Japan.
Yeah.
And started a new life at the age of 51.
That's wild. That's wild.
Yeah.
See, hearing stuff like that, then it feels like a little bit of a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Because I'm in my early 40s.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, wow. Okay. It's so funny how like baby steps are conceptually very easy, but so hard to like get started on. Especially
in stride with the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you're talking earlier about, tools, I was thinking zooming in and zooming out, right? So zooming out is what we did first with her, right? We said, just paint me a picture of like the dream, right? And no holds barred. And that's the zooming out thing.
Yeah.
Like if you could have anything in no space or time, right? Like all unlimited resources, you could fly to the next solar system or whatever you want to do. And that's just to get the brain to move out of its certain construct of where I am now. I can't because. Right?
Yeah.
So it just opens up okay, well, if there are no obstacles, then what would that be like? It's not necessarily, now I think her situation is specifically interesting because she went after the thing that came up. And not everybody does that right away.
Right.
Now, some people might come up with something and they'll ultimately land on something that was adjacent or it was in the realm of, or something was slightly different, but because they had the process of zooming out and getting creative, it allowed them to be open to new possibilities they weren't able to see.
Right.
Just by the virtue of going through that process. And then zooming in is, okay, so I have this like crazy, big, lofty goal. What is the first step on the ladder between here and there?
Yep.
I don't have to climb the whole ladder. I just have to go here.
Yep.
And that's really, really hard to do.
Super hard.
Because once you get that thing identified, you're like, oh, I want to go after that thing.
Yep.
Right? I want to be the drummer in that band that plays Fenway.
Yeah.
But that you don't start from today and get there, right?
Yeah.
So, and then step by step, checking in with yourself at every step. Does this feel right?
Mm-hmm.
And not just like, it doesn't make me feel happy or does it make me feel sad or does it make me feel frustrated, but like in that quiet space that I was referencing earlier. You said earlier, you mentioned like when we were talking, like I have this emotional swell that's coming up, right? It's like that's information.
Yeah.
And what is it telling you?
Yep.
Oh, I want to lean in. I want to move forward towards that. That feels good to me.
Yeah.
And then balancing that against, does that feel good because my ego wants it? like it? Like wants to like, oh, I'm awesome. Or is it like, no, this is something that really feels like deep in my soul. This is right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I totally identify with that. Yeah.
And sometimes that can be beautiful and wonderful. And sometimes it can be really hard because you have to have some hard conversations.
Yeah.
I've had them too.
Yeah.
Recently.
Yeah. Oh man. There's a lot there.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want this to be a 4-hour podcast episode. But there's a lot there.
Yeah.
And I think specifically like what you're talking about, essentially like gut checking yourself,
Mm-hmm.
looks different at different times of life.
It does.
Because myself as an example, pre-fatherhood,
Mm-hmm.
right? Finding things that I was good at that like felt good, that was like, oh yeah, this is a good direction. I think felt good and was a good direction because there was some ego attached to it.
Sure.
But now...
And that's natural too for the age and stage that you were, right? Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But now the gut check is not so much ego.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more like, well, what feels good and what feels correct based on the life I want to build for myself
Mm-hmm.
and for my family,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is a totally different, very, very different paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
I was going down the road in the film world of like trying to work on the biggest, best projects I possibly could. And the lifestyle that's required of that, except for a select few people, of which I know a couple, is not very idyllic.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard.
Mm-hmm. It's really hard.
Relationships suffer.
Mm-hmm.
People miss their kids growing up.
Yep.
That is not something that is appealing to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's so funny when we met for coffee, you gave me a little impromptu coaching session, and all I did was
help myself.
I know all I did was buy you a coffee, but and you said something that's really stuck with me, and it's like you said I have to do this, and we're gonna work,
right,
and we're gonna get to that in a second.
Yes.
When we were chatting,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, well, what is your ideal scenario look like, or where do you think you want to go,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I found myself at that moment saying things that I never, like 10 years ago, never would have thought.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, what's important to me? It's like being as flexible as I can be with my time,
Mm-hmm.
and effectively making the most amount of money for the least amount of like physical work possible, all things like that. And I was like, I floated some ideal numbers, like, oh, how much would business want to be making a year, and all this other stuff. And it's just so fascinating to me how that changes
Mm-hmm.
over time, and how you have to constantly gut check yourself. And I'm still like, there's still a big part of me, because I said earlier, I'm trying too hard. I feel like sometimes I'm trying to force like an outcome. It's like, okay, great. Well, I have these goals. I want to be able to work from just a laptop if I want to, because my whole life has just been carting car full of gear everywhere,
Right. Yeah.
But what does that really look like? And it's ever evolving. It's like this ever evolving thing.
Yeah, totally. So I wanted to grab onto what you said about something that keyed in about this idea of being gentle with ourselves, right? Like, like how do we? There is a point at which a few years ago, I was when I started my business, I was like, I'm going to go hit these numbers, and I'm going to become X, whatever. I'm going to have this income, and I'm going to do all these things, and I'm going to get all these followers, right? And I realized that it was so taxing on my adrenal system.
Yep.
I was like, oh, right. I remember what burnout feels like. This is what burnout feels like. And I was only a couple years in. And, part of it was because it was during the pandemic. And so I was like doing my best to just show up where I could and be of service. And, and we had no boundaries, right? We're like, I'll just be at my computer 20 hours a day. It's fine. It's fine.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. And, never mind that my kids are like failing school on their laptop, right? But we're still dealing with the repercussions of that. But this idea of being gentle on oneself while pursuing those goals, it's not that the arrival fallacy. A part of that story is that that there is a number at which I'll be happy, right? There is a certain point at which it's different for everybody. So of course we know that's not true because it's not only is there more opportunity to ask for more or reach for more, but the striving is kind of the fun of it if we let it be.
Mm-hmm.
So what if we were to strive for more gentleness? What if we were striving for more peace, for more connection, for more time with my family? What if it wasn't about striving for numbers or striving for some sort of accomplishment? And so being hard on yourself about that is antithetical kind of to what you're striving for, right? And I don't mean just you, but...
Yeah, it's the concept of like, if similar to the arrival fallacy, right? But it's almost like, well, I need to put in all the... Here's a great example. I have a great example. It's like the FIRE crowd, the financially independent, retire early movement.
Yes,
right?
Yes, right.
It's very similar in that effect where it's like, I'm going to sacrifice my 20s and my 30s.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to penny pinch for 20 years.
Right.
And invest and blah, blah, blah. Like, and sure, there's positives to that. I'm not like knocking it, but like as a concept, it's that. It's like, I'm going to sacrifice all of this up front so that I can relax essentially later. Or even easier, it's like basically the whole economic system of our country and the world since like the 1950s, basically, which is like, exactly how I was raised was go to school, get a degree, get a job that pays you regularly, and you have health insurance, and everything's great. And then you can retire when you're 65 and not have enough energy to actually enjoy your life.
Or be sick, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's kind of that same concept. It's like, where do you find the balance? And balance is so hard because it's like we, you and I, everybody want to enjoy their life and want to get the most out of it. But it's like, I feel like there's just that nagging structure where it's like you have to keep pushing harder and harder to get to this like esoteric place that may or may not exist. So
this is where I think consciousness, the practice of consciousness comes into play. And this is what I love talking about more than anything, because this is an evolving practice for me too. And I didn't realize what it meant to have a conscious life. I even kind of like sort of refute it, if that's the right word. I was like, I whatever, I don't want to hear about that.
Yeah.
And in fact, what consciousness is just having the awareness of choice. And conscious leadership then is about leadership being influence, not a role or a title or a job, but actually having the leadership is I'm aware of the impact I'm having in my own life on myself and others around me. And I'm using that consciously to the effect that I want to create whatever quality or value it is in my life. So, and for the people around me. So if I'm consciously leading my life in a way that is through inquiry and through measuring it against or with the ballast of my value set, then it is there's never an arrival.
Yeah.
It's always a becoming. And then we can be, I think that there's some gentleness in that. They're like, is this what I want right now? Is this what I want today? Is this what I want a week from now? Not to say we don't plan, because I think planning is awesome, right? And having and having an idea of what we want to be in the future, and like I said, painting that picture with that client that day. And I've got lots of stories about that, but that's one is particularly, I think, interesting. But to be able to say, okay, so if I envision myself in Japan in a year and a half or whatever it is, I had another client who did the same thing. She envisioned herself as an interior designer for their own firm. And just today, I got a text that she met with the president of this big company, and they wanted. I mean, she's like killing it out there.
Nice.
But she came to me saying, "I think I'm going to charge $15 an hour to do this craft thing." And not that she couldn't do that well, but it was like, come on, And now she's has this incredible organization that she's leading. But all of the while, we kept asking the same questions in both cases. Does this feel right to me right now? Is this leading me into that place? And if it didn't, be okay with that.
Right.
To be okay with the difference. Be okay with, maybe it isn't what I want. Maybe what I thought I wanted is something different. And that is okay. That's the acceptance piece.
Right.
Like, if I'm going to actually use myself as not my ego all the time, but like my peace or my whatever it is. I have another client who says, talks about his purpose as being inspiring love in others. That's his purpose. And he expresses that through his business, through his speaking, so if he's more and more clear on that all the time. If he's sitting on a podcast and he's checking with himself mentally, am I inspiring love in this other person? Or do I feel it in myself? Then he knows he's on the right track.
Yep.
If he isn't, he goes, maybe I need to shift a little bit. It doesn't mean I can leave the room screaming. It just means, oh, okay, maybe I need to shift topics or shift focus, or it's this gentle guidance.
Yeah.
Rather than, I'm doing it wrong. I'm so wrong. It sucks. What's wrong with me?
You said something interesting. You said it's not arriving, it's becoming.
Mm-hmm.
And that's totally, that's what it is.
Or being rather than doing.
Being rather than doing.
Yeah.
That's totally what it is. It's the same idea as like there is no destination.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the journey.
Yeah.
And trying to get more comfortable with that and trying to be okay with your own evolutions,
Mm-hmm.
Because again, just for my own part, like if I didn't figure out some way of like being okay with my evolutions, then I never would have like dug myself out of my depressed hole in my parents' basement when I like left Boston and couldn't make music work and like all this stuff. So, that definitely exists in all of us. It's just like getting more comfortable with that as like a concept.
Yeah. And I think too, that brings up a great point. So we were talking about my experience earlier and yours bringing yourself out of the like quite literally a basement.
Mm-hmm.
That when we have those formative moments, we have a choice to use those moments as, okay, this is what I don't want ever again, or don't want to cultivate ever again. Sometimes things happen and, we can't, but we don't have control over things that happen around us, or the weather, other people, right? So I always say you don't have control over the weather, you don't have control over the other people, but you have control about how you respond and how you approach it. Another great version of this is my friend Maria, whose son, when he was, I think, 15 or 16, was hit by a drunk driver and lost his leg.
Oh my
and
God.
He was in the crosswalk, like he was doing everything right. He was on his way home. And this kid was like a super athlete and superstar student and like quite almost killed him. And they all had a choice, right? To let that be the demise of their family. Or they had a choice to say, hey, you know what? We're going to accept this as not ideal, right? It sucks. You have to mourn that. And then what can we learn? What can we do from this? So I had a similar experience where when the fit hit the fan in my life, I certainly fell apart for a while. And then I started asking questions based on actually a message that my late husband left for me about choosing. And I had to start asking myself what it is to choose, what it is to be conscious of my journey, the path, right? We can definitely engineer an outcome if we want to.
Sure.
We definitely can. It may not be exactly what we think we want, but we can say, I want that thing, and then go get that thing. Sure. Is that knowing that the arrival at that destination is inevitably going to be different than we expect or want? It might be better, it might be worse, but it's going to be different. Is that how we want to live our life? By engineering everything? I actually think that religion has a lot to do with that, right? Mm-hmm. It's like that's sort of like, if I do X, then Y will happen, right? And the truth is, we don't really know.
Sure.
So we don't know any of it, but we do know that if we continue to show up the way we choose and learn from that and keep asking that question, is this how I want to be right now? Is this who I want to be right now? Does it feel in line with who I truly am at my core? Then that won't steer us wrong very long, And I think those formative experiences give us a really acute sense of that.
Yeah.
Whereas other people who maybe don't have a lot of struggle or have a lot of strife in their life, they don't have that gift of that ballast.
Yeah. That's really inspiring stuff. Yeah. Wow. Makes me feel a lot better, actually.
Well, and I work with a lot of people in my life who are in the recovery, in the rooms, as they say.
Sure.
And I often ask that question, like, what was the moment that you said enough is enough?
Yeah.
And it's different for everybody.
100%.
But almost everybody will say well, there was a moment and it was my rock bottom, or it was the moment I realized I was going to lose this, or it was the moment I realized that I wasn't the person I wanted to be.
Yep.
And it's more extreme, or less depending on who it is. And some people even have judgment about that. They're like, well, I don't understand how that person could not get all the way to rock bottom when I had to go there, right? But everybody's different. But what's consistent among people who are successful in recovery, and there's an important distinction there, the people who are in my experience, successful in recovery is the people who said, oh, I don't want that anymore.
Right.
I am clear.
Right.
That is the moment at which I go, no more. I want something different. I don't know what the different is, but I know it's not that.
Yep.
And then they start making, right, step by step, as you will, through how to find something different.
Yeah.
But there's a decision there that's made.
Totally. I can tell. You are like so engaged with this right now. Like I can tell this is like, kind of at the core of what you told me. Where it's like, as a coach, right?
Yeah.
As professionally,
yeah.
Like you have to do this stuff because you speak very passionately from here about all this stuff. And I think it's a really good segue to like start to tie things together and wrap things up, where it's like, you had this entrepreneurial life, essentially your whole life. Like you were exposed to it young. You have your own business now. There's definitely been skips and hiccups along the way.
Yeah. I did have a few jobs. They didn't generally work out well.
Sure.
Much like you, it's hard for me.
But you've had to like literally pull yourself up from your bootstraps, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, you literally, your first husband died.
Yeah.
You were raising kids on your own, like the most difficult thing I could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
And you've landed here where you are today. I mean, it sounds, after everything we've talked about, it sounds maybe a little cornball to say it, but it's like, why coaching? Like, why coaching?
Sure.
Like, why is this where you've arrived now? Maybe it's not where you stay, but where you've become a coach, right? You haven't arrived, you've become a coach.
Right, exactly.
Why is that now? Like, why is that happening now?
Well, for one, I like to, when people ask me that question, for one, I reference a book that my mom used to read to me called Little Bunny Follows His Nose.
Okay.
And this is a real book that I actually found.
I believe you.
I found a copy of it that they don't make it anymore. But the story is that the little boy bunny goes out and says, I think his mom sends him out on an errand or something. And he's like, oh, I'm going to follow my nose. And he follows different smells. There's a smell of, I can't remember what it is now, but there's a smell of a tree and there's a smell of grass and there's a smell of pie at the end of the, that's how he finds his way back home. Mom has made a pie, right? And that's a kind of what I'm talking about, right? It's like, I had to ask questions. I had to get curious about, what it would mean to choose love in my life, not just romantic love, but love for myself, love for my career, love for other people in a way that would engage my skills and gifts and interests, and in a way that would synthesize my experience. And I did not see myself as someone who was like, oh, I have all this business acumen, I'm going to go in and jump into that world. Like, that was not on my radar.
But I think a lot of people who get into that space do feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me specifically, I was in a leadership development program because I had led several, but I'd never been in one. So I thought that seemed a little bit out of integrity. So I'm going to go do that. And there was a woman who came to speak to that group, and she was a PhD out of Yale, and also a executive coach. And I was like, what is this? I'd never even heard of it. And I was like, what is this thing, this coaching thing you do? She's like, interesting. Come talk to me. So so we had a conversation, and she said, here are the ways in which you can pursue it. And I had all the questions that everybody has, which is like, well, I've never run my own business, and which is actually not true, but I didn't give myself the credit because I hadn't put it through that frame.
Yeah, your concept of what a business was not
an arts organization,
right?
Yeah, or a nonprofit.
But in reality,
of course, that's all right. So, or having this experience growing up, right? And I'm not a leader, which of course is also not true now that I understand all the different pieces of my life. Or I don't know how executives think, as I grew up in a family of executives, right? So, and actually was one, but did not think of myself that way, because it was through an arts organization.
Well, self-perception is always different.
It's huge, right? Yeah. So, but I was completely out of like, I would never have put that frame on it at all. And I asked, well, I don't know how to coach. She goes, we don't have to know how to coach. You can go learn how to do that. And I was like, oh, cool. So because I'm a high performer, I Googled, what is the Harvard of coaching schools? I'm such a nerd.
Welcome to the club. Love good nerd talk.
And so I came up with a couple of options at the time. There are actually more now, which is interesting. It's only been a few years, but and I found the one that fit right for me and felt right for me, and just again followed my nose and walked into that room that first day of training, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm home.
That's awesome. I
found my people, and I had no idea that there were these people that talked this way and thought this way and approached life this way. And so, yeah, that was a profound moment for sure. So why coaching? That's why, and it's a way to express all the things that I love to do and that I'm good at, including I do a lot of speaking too, and having conversations like this, which I love.
Yeah.
And so I get to kind of employ those performing skills in a way that feels in my integrity and good to me. And I get to meet fabulous people. And I think that I want to make sure that I say this too, because there has been, especially recently, a lot of lifting up some of the rocks and letting out the dark underbelly of the coaching industry. There's going to be a dark underbelly of any industry.
Sure.
And so that has been pretty heartbreaking to witness. And one of the things that I was so focused on early on was, people are like, oh, you don't need it because it's very unregulated right now. I suspect that's going to change soon, given all the things that have been happening lately. But, people are like, you don't need to have a certification to coach. You can just put a shingle out and go do it. And I thought, to me, it is imperative to abide by a code of ethics,
sure,
to be in line with best practices, to be up on the latest data. And so while there are lots of coaches who are in their integrity and do good things who are not certified, to me, that was really like the pinnacle of, it's not just about having an accomplishment or a badge. It's about, I've studied for thousands of hours and I've put in thousands of hours of coaching to accomplish this thing so that I can be in my integrity and I can sit across from you and say, I know how to do this. Not that I'm an expert at it or I'm the best at it, but I know how to do it well.
Yeah, but you're owning that too.
Yeah.
And I don't trust anybody who says, oh, anybody who can sit in front of me and say, I'm an expert at this and I have no ounce of self-doubt, like there's nothing I could possibly do wrong.
Run.
Yeah. Because it's not how it works.
Yeah, it's not how it works.
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
The guide should be flawed, just as you said, this is going back. I'm going to misquote you.
Fine.
But effectively it was like, the mark of a true leader isn't to like dictate and tell this is what you do. It's basically like to facilitate, and I always think about this, in my experience, to like kind of tie it back to my experience in filmmaking. It's like, I think people who are good directors of films,
it's the same thing.
It's the concept is like, I've had a chance to direct a little bit, right? Not a ton, just a little, but like the way I like to do it is best idea wins, essentially.
Yeah.
It's like the whole job to me is, you're not like a puppet master. You're not like making people do specific things. You're a facilitator. You're literally just a facilitator.
Yeah.
You're like the barometer against which all these ideas, all this collaboration happens. But I feel like that is true in like the coaching space.
Yeah.
And as someone who's like in a group coaching program now, that is very much the vibe. And why I like it so much is because there is no like, this is how you do it, or this is the way it should be. It's that everybody is flawed in their own way, but through the flaws come really beautiful, like new experiences and new realizations and things like that.
And you're the expert in your life, not me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you're the expert in your business, not me.
Correct.
I have some experience and I might offer a story or an insight or reflect something back at you that I hear, but I'm not, if I tell you what to do and then it goes great, that's great. Then I can take credit for that, right? But if it doesn't go great, then I also need to take credit for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super interesting.
And I don't want to take credit for any of it.
Yeah. What's next for you?
It's a good question.
Yeah. Okay.
Creating safety. That's right. It's my vulnerable moment right now. Yeah. So I'm leaning more heavily into speaking.
Okay.
And I'm finding more and more that how much I love doing that, and how I really I love to tell stories, and I love to connect with people through stories, and that goes way back to being a little kid on a stage. And
human culture is built on storytelling, so
absolutely.
it works.
Around the campfire, which is what I did last week. And it's such a powerful and lovely way to build relationship. It's gentle. So going into back to this idea of gentleness, because it's more like osmosis than, and art, you glean your own meaning from it. Like I can offer it to you, but I'm not telling you.
Open to interpretation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I love that. I also love coaching, and I'm really still big into the one-on-one right now. I am considering, I've run many, many groups in the past for myself and for other organizations. I'm actually running a few right now for another organization, which I love to do. I'm considering starting my own again, because I'm noticing that there are many people who are emerging leaders and entrepreneurs who are not quite hitting their stride yet. They are hungry for community, and they're hungry for safety. Actually, they're hungry for safety.
Yeah.
Like, how do I be myself? And also, they're asking the same questions you are. How do I be myself? How do I honor myself? And also lean into needing to take care of my responsibilities and grow my world, right, in a way that feels aligned and gentle on myself. Yeah. So I'm considering that as well. Stay tuned.
Yeah. And I could go on and on, but I think it's a good place to wrap up. So I will obviously say this in the intro, but what is the name of your business, and where can people find you if they want to learn more?
The name of my business is Master of One Coaching, ONE, and the website is masterofonecoaching.com. And you can find, I offer a free impact session, which is a legit 30-minute coaching session. It's absolutely complimentary. You can sign up for that there at the website.
I love it.
Yeah.
Merritt, thanks so much for doing this. This is awesome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy we just met serendipitously and now we have this relationship that I'm so happy we have. So thank you for coming and talking to me.
It's so my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, you got it. All right, everybody, there you have it. That was my interview with Meritt Minnemeyer. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. That's one of the longer ones. There was just so much meat on the bone in that conversation. I wanted to keep as much of it in as I could. I will be sure to put links to all of her stuff in the show notes, and shameless self-promotion again, I'm going to put a link to my email newsletter there as well. I'm really trying to be more consistent with writing and getting things released there at least every 2 weeks, if not every week. So I'd love to have you if you want to subscribe. As always, you can find out more about me, your host, Drew English, on Instagram at Drew English with 2 H's at the end, or online at drewenglish.com. You can learn more about No Set Path at No Set Path on Instagram or nosetpath.com online. And with that being said, I hope you have a great new year, happy and healthy, and we'll see you in 2025. All right, take care.